My name is Victoria Best, and I have done an enormous amount of work in the community as far as outreach with young people, youth of all ages in residential facilities, group homes, and also the work that I'm doing now is to really kind of educate people and bring them to a better place in their lives so they can make good decisions for themselves. And this is young people and people of all ages, to be honest.
What do you think people don't understand about the work of taking care of kids in the system? I know you did that work for quite a long time, and I imagine that is not easy and it's not for everyone.
By far. And it almost wasn't for me, to be honest, until I had to remind myself of my own story, of my own battles, of my own challenges, and to have the bandwidth to be able to withstand going through these traumas again. Because you are going through the traumas oftentimes with the people that you're going to service. And so if you think that you could pull yourself out of it and you're going to go home with no emotion connected, it's not true. And thinking about the young people that I used to work with, one of the biggest things and components that I wanted them to understand is that it gets better. But I can't make it better for them. They have to want to do the work. So all I could be is that loving person. That does not mean that I want to give you a pass, that everything you're doing is acceptable, but I do want you to know that I understand.
You responded to a post of mine on social media, and I was asking for people to respond to an episode of the Mighty Writers podcast that I did that featured Akiba Emerson, who's a woman who grew up in foster care. Why did you reach out, and what is it that you do want to say?
What I really wanted to say would change my life was education. And throughout that time, I met a mentor, and I believe what really connected me to this story and Akiba's story was her work through Mighty Writers and this process. And so for me, it was being able to have that mentor to connect me to education, to help me through my process, to share my story, to be appreciative and accepting of myself and my past and my trauma. And so through education, I found enlightenment. And that enlightenment was all facilitated by an individual who cared.
What do you think people should know about children in foster care that they might not know?
They want to be loved. And they're not angry at the foster parents, but they're angry at a life that they didn't ask for and they didn't know how they got there. And they don't even know that they're angry. I was in Belmont Psychiatric Center on City Line Avenue when I was 10 years old. And I was one of their outpatient clients, and I was kicked out of the program because they told me to my face, one of the clinicians told me that you're an angry person. And she said, I don't want you to come back here anymore. And I told her, thank you very much. That's what I wanted. But at the time, all that she was trying to tell me, I didn't understand. Like, I didn't know I was angry. In my mind, I just didn't want to be dictated to by all of these strangers. I didn't understand why these strangers had more power over my life than I did. And so if I could say anything, is that you will have a voice. People do care, and it's not personal on either side.
Are there parts of your own journey in the system that, as a child, that you would like to share?
If I could share anything about my personal story, is that all of the things that people think happen to foster children do happen. It does not mean that it doesn't happen in every experience or in every home, but I was raped, I was beaten by one of my foster brothers, and I was in over 13 foster homes and placements. And so some of the places that I identified earlier were just stepping stones for me. And they were preparing me for this opportunity that I would get when I would meet this mentor.
And you're such a living example of what you say, which is that it gets better. And like, in spite of everything that you told me, that you have created this beautiful family and this beautiful life for yourself, where you're contributing and you could just feel your loving energy. And so like, I think I hope that I work with some kids now, over at Covenant House, and I hope that they get to experience stories like yours, because I know they need it.
Thank you.
Thank Thank you. At one point when I was teaching, I estimated that about 30% of the kids in my class had been or were in the foster care system. And that really, when I absorbed that number, I started to understand how well, I said to you before, it seems to me that foster children, at least in this city and state, and probably elsewhere, are often very invisible. And kids, because I was the English teacher, kids would share their stories, and sometimes the stories were so it was hard to imagine so many things happening to one child. So hard that I think a lot of adults in the school system didn't always believe what the kids were saying. And I think one of the reasons this topic has called to me from the beginning is that I think we need to really understand what kids are going through and believe them when they tell us what their lives are like. Because if we believe them, I think a lot more people are gonna want to support kids who find themselves without the kind of adult support that they need.
People don't want to hear the stories because that means that they then have to be an effective force for change. They're going to be tasked with that duty. And so if they continue to pretend like these issues don't exist, then no one has to do anything. I was taken away from my mom when I was 2. My mother had mental illness. I was the youngest of 8 children. She would never raise any of her children. And so what that is like for a lot of young people is them growing up unloved, unwanted, unheard, unseen, right? And so when we talk about that, it's just, for me, making sure that not only is my voice heard, but those too. And so I think for you, that's the catalyst that we've been charged with, putting their voices on a higher level. And so with my nonprofit, I do provide tutoring and educational resources for Philadelphia residents, young and old. And I gear it towards that because I was once a youth in foster care and placement, and now I'm an adult advocating for those in foster care and placement. But even though I want to advocate, that does not mean I have all of the things in place, and that everyone else does too. And so sometimes people want to help adults, but they don't know how. And so, they may have their own challenges that they're dealing with. Right. I want to help the kids learn how to budget or teach them so that they get places to live when they come out of foster care and do X, Y, and Z. But they don't know how to work calculators, or they don't understand how to do multiplication or fractions. And so these little basic fundamentals is how I've been able to give back in my own way through my nonprofit, which is a very, very grassroots organization.
Can you say the name of your nonprofit?
Victoria Urban Outreach Tutoring Service, and it's called VUOTS. I guess it's not pronounced that way, but in my mind, that's the way I heard it. I heard VUOTS, and so that's what I call it. It's the acronym. But and I started that because I wanted to be in control of my own life after all of those years of people telling me what to do, when to go to bed and in placement, when to eat. And when you're at home with your family, like I have children, my son, he goes in and out of the refrigerator. He doesn't have to ask. You don't have to ask to go to the bathroom. He don't have to just. When you're going through these things in these different homes, I don't think people really understand the magnitude that it does for a person's psyche. And so again, dream big, live with resilience, and minimize the amount of anger. And that's for everybody involved. People are mad because they got to go to work and work with kids who don't have parents. Kids are mad that they got to have people that come to work with them that don't want to work with kids because they are parents. So the people that are leaving their homes to come work with these kids, they don't want to be there because they don't want to deal with other people's stuff, to be honest, But I'm just telling everybody, it takes a village, and we need all of them involved, but we just need them to come with an open mindset and a heart willing to do something that's bigger than themselves.